trying to get it made. If you read the script and you like the script, you'll like the movie, because that's the movie.
So Quentin Tarantino, what would be the movies that marked you and us when you were a kid and that engaged you on the path of being a filmmaker?
I don't know if I'd go so far as saying it put me on the path of making me a filmmaker. But the first movie as a kid that I kind of understood genre distinctions that made me kind of have to break down a movie a little bit would have been the Abbott and Costello movie, Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein.
Plus the dangerous and terrifying Wolf Man.
Because back when I was really, really little, my favorite movies were horror films, especially the Universal horror films, and then and comedies, you know, like W.C. Fields and Abbott and Costello and Laurel and Hardy and people like that. And so when I watched the Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, I remember thinking that was like the greatest movie ever made and maybe ever could be made, because the funny stuff was really funny. And the scary stuff was really scary. The Frankenstein monster wasn't a joke, he was for real. And even that builds to that climax when they're gonna translate Lou's brain into the monster's brain, and the monster breaks out, and that nurse, he picks that nurse up and lifts her over his head and throws her out the window, and she dies. So I watched that one, and then I remember I think I saw Abbott and Costello Meet the Mummy. And then just when the horror stuff started happening in The Mummy, that was especially when I was like, wow, these are the best movies ever made. I mean, the funny stuff is really funny and the scary stuff is really scary. These are the greatest.
You didn't go to college, you didn't go to high school.
No.
So do you consider that being like in a video club and watching a lot of movies was your only way to educate yourself?
Well, I mean, look, the reason I got a job at the video store was because I was already a film expert.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't do really good in school, but I knew about movies and I read about movies, and I you know, like a lot of those guys, like a Peter Bogdanovich or something like that, I wrote down every movie I saw. I looked stuff up in the library. I circled reference books. I made notes of directors' filmographies. I went through Andrew Sarris's book, American Cinema, and tried to see.
You were a geek of movies.
Yeah. So, well, I looked at it as more like a scholarship, you know. And even though I hated school, I was academic when it came to cinema, while I ignored everything else. So the reason I ended up getting hired at Video Archive simply because I was already a movie expert. And then for 5 years, I literally was able to take it to like to graduate level.
You were well known for the violence, for the soundtracks, for the stories of revenge. What would be the first day that you thought to yourself, okay, I found my way of shooting, I found my way of telling stories to people?
Once I was a director?
Yeah.
Well, not really. It was always based on the script with me. It's always based on the script, and then I go out and how do I want to film this scene? How do I want to film that scene? I did the movie on the page. If I told the story, if I made the movie I wanted to make on the page, and especially back then, I really made it on the page, trying to get it made. If you read the script and you like the script, you'll like the movie, because that's the movie.
For you, is it the most difficult part of where do I put my camera when you are on the day of shooting?
No, it's easy.
It's easy for you?
It's easy. It's just second nature. I don't have to think about it. It's
like natural because you think because you have like a gift, or because you watch a lot of movies before?
No, not because I watch a lot of movies before. I don't put cameras where I think somebody else put a camera. It's one of the things that happens as you become a director is you don't have to think about stuff like that anymore. You naturally know where you want to shoot the scene. You rehearse the scene and everything, and then when it comes time to shoot it, you just naturally know. If you want to do something tricky, that's a different thing.
Yeah.
But just what's the best way to shoot it? I mean, it comes natural.
Okay. How would you define your way of telling, of creating dialogue? Because it's kind of a poetry. It could be like a rap song.
Yeah.
How would you, I don't know, making all that stuff happen?
At the end of the day, I get the characters talking to each other.
This place, a coffee shop.
What's wrong with that? Nobody ever robs restaurants. Why not?
So maybe I'm doing it for the first little bit as I kind of get them talking to each other. But once they start talking to each other, I have very little to do with it.
But you find a rhythm between the characters.
Well, that's the only way. I start it, yeah, but then I get them talking to each other, and then they do it. And my job is to stay out of the way.
You always talk in interviews like a good movie could be a movie like you can play it like a record in your house.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, some movies are like that. Yeah, I mean that's not the case. I mean, if you played Days of Heaven that wouldn't be like a record. That would be like this moving painting that was just constantly going on and everything. But with movies with fun dialogues, all right, can play like records.
So you could play some of your movies.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
But okay, imagine, because we have a young audience, imagine that a person don't know anything about your cinema. Mm-hmm. What would be the best scene that would you sum up your cinema?
Well, I'm not the one to try to take my whatever it is I have and try to boil it down into a nutshell, especially in order to convince somebody of something. I would say if you're a young person and you've never seen any one of my movies, start with the first one. Start with Reservoir Dogs. Okay, if you like Reservoir Dogs, then you might like the rest. Well, I don't know why I came here tonight. I got the feeling something ain't right. No, it'd be like, I remember like when I was at working at Video Archives, we had a big French section, one of the biggest sections we had. So this was the 80s, and this was during that time that Eric Romer was making all those kind of like sexy comedies, well then not really comedies, but these sexy little humorous stories with all these, hot young people, like Full Moon in Paris or Pauline at the Beach and whatever.
Pardon, mais j'ai vu la télé allumée, alors je suis montée, comme ça.
Tu as bien fait. Je reviens du bain, il faisait pas chaud aujourd'hui. On descend ?
Oui, mais ta serviette mouillée.
Ah oui, tu as raison. Je vais me changer, tu m'attends en bas ?
And the boxes were always kind of provocative. So constantly, customers would come up with something like Pauline at the Beach and go, "Is this any good?" And they go, "Oh, well, it's an Eric Romer movie." Well, who's that? And so I would describe to him a little bit about Eric Romer. Well, he tells these kind of, lightly charming tales about, these people in these little situations, and not much happens, but you kind of get to know these people. There's usually some sort of romantic roundelay going on, and it's kind of charming. And they go, "Oh, well, is it a comedy?" No, it's not a comedy. It's not a comedy. There's no jokes, but it just, if you give yourself over to it, you could find it lightly amusing. Okay, so I've set it up for you now. Now, if you should, go home and watch that. And if you like it, if you don't like it, you'll know you don't like it. But if you like it, then you might want to go and watch a couple more of his movies. Yeah. And whenever I gave that sort of preamble to Eric Romer, those customers came back and they watched like 4 or 5.
So Once Upon a Time is like a love letter to the Hollywood of 1969. And this is the year that was the beginning of the new Hollywood, with Easy Riders and the release. What's the difference now in 2019? There is like a lot of franchise. Do you think we have lost the period of Hollywood of 50 years before?
No, well, we definitely have that.
Yeah? In which way? So
they're not making those kind of movies now.
In 1994, at the Festival of Cannes, when you received the prize, you said,
"I don't make the kind of movies that kind of bring people together." And you got to find the one movie that brought them all together. I kind of make movies that kind of split people apart.
Yeah, well, not so much with a big audience, but with a jury, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, if you're talking about 6 people or you're talking about 12 people, yeah, all right. If you're talking about 200 people, I think I win them over.
It's your 9th movie, and can you confirm to me, like, after the 10th, you would be over and it would be your last movie?
Yeah, no more theatrical movies at least, yeah.
Do you have like any new projects in mind after Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
Yeah, I wrote a play.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and I want to do a play, and I've written like a 5-episode TV series. And so I think before I figure out the next movie, I'll probably do the play.
Oh, that's great.
And then maybe do the TV series. It might either be a TV series or a TV movie, but it's designed for television.
Great. Thank you very much.
Cool, thank you.
It was a pleasure.
I appreciate it.